Well, good morning, everybody. It's 10 a.m. Welcome to the fourth in our series um, called The Gurus. And today we're going to have a great program for you. We're getting away from straight business talk, which is a nice thing to do every now and then. Just some obligatory housekeeping items. We've muted everybody's sound and we'll continue to mute sound, audio and video. If for some reason you see yourself on the screen, hit the mute button, please. The only visuals you should see are myself and Hugh and me. We have a chat button down the bottom. If you've got a question, and this may be the sort of day where you want to ask questions, just pop it into the chat button. We'll keep an eye on it, and I'll make sure that we get an answer to you as the program's progressing. And the most important thing is we get requests all the time for copies of the recording of the programs. This afternoon, we will take the recording and upload it to our YouTube channel, so it'll be available tomorrow. And we know a lot of our members like to see the programs after the fact. So let's talk about today's program. We will discuss Africa as seen through the eyes of Hugh Coppen, who's on the screen with us. He's the co-founder of Tasimba, the African safari that is considered to be one of the most unique in a highly competitive tourism sector, where cookie cutter tour packages are all over the place. They proliferate. For bucket list travelers who've always aspired to experience Africa and its remarkable people, cultures, wildlife, and beauty, there's no better opportunity to acquire the inside scoop than the hour we're going to spend with Hugh today, because this man knows Africa. He was born there and knows it and loves it. A little bit about Hugh and Tasimba. He grew up in Zimbabwe, formerly, of course, Rhodesia, and has had a lifelong passion for Africa, its people, and its wilderness. From countless safaris, he learned that there is always something new that nature can teach us. And his highly successful CEO business career in the US, Canada, and the UK has led him to his current professional role as a leadership consultant and executive coach. He co-founded Tasimba in 2015 with Heather Weaver, with whom he has worked for over 30 years. Hugh, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thanks, Alf. It's a great pleasure to be with you all.
So let me kick this off, if I may. I very rarely tell personal experiences, but I want to use this as a lead-in. Over the decades, I've traveled to all parts of the world. I was born and raised in Australia, the big country. I've seen a lot of the parts of the world, but when my wife and I went to Africa in the 90s, we were absolutely blown away. It transcended anything that we can imagine. I'm not just talking about the big five and the animals. It was an experience that just was unrivaled. With that in mind, why do people fall in love with Africa? What's going on here?
Well, I think you've touched on part of it right there, and that is that somehow Africa does blow your mind. And I think a lot of it has to do with the wide open spaces, for the most part, unless you're in the cities, the nature, the peace, the quiet of the place, and the fact that you are getting away from what we take in our busy day-to-day lives, the sort of the constant bustle, the distractions all the time of our daily lives here. And somehow Africa manages then to get under your skin. I mean, there's a lovely quote about everything in Africa bites, but the safari bug is the one that bites best. And the thing about Africa, I think, really, Alf, is this, that it is so unique in the world. It is different from other places. The people are so generally so warm, so open, and they are a breath of fresh air, literally and figuratively. And so there's unique scenery. You get to see vast horizons, which for the most part, I mean, other than in Australia and parts of the US Midwest, but horizons that seem to go on forever. And in that, you get this feeling of space. I think the other key to it is that for many people, they start looking at Africa and saying, this is where we all came from. This is our deep ancestral roots. And so there's a feeling of, I'm coming back home in a a figurative way.
You stay with the people for a moment. Africa's suffered so much in its time, exceptional colonialization by the Brits, by Belgium. It goes on and on. It's been an oppressed continent. Why is it that the people have that joie de vivre, that smile, that friend? I mean, in the weeks we spent there, there was never one bad moment. I can't even say that about where I live in the United States. Why is that?
I agree with you. I think the reason is partly because they have stayed very, very true to their rural cultural roots, so that even the people in the cities have a rural home that they go to, or that they still have family at. And so because of that, they have this sense of community, the sense of belonging, the sense of just being part of a society which makes them who they are. I mean, there's that wonderful South African philosophy called Ubuntu, which was very big with Bishop Tutu and Mandela as well, talking about, I am who I am because of who we are. And so it's a sense that they have of community. In many ways, their culture is a very much more communal culture than ours is, and still is. They really believe, for example, that all the land around a village belongs to all the people, so that nobody has this. They have a plot of land that they can grow crops on, but they have the rest of it, which is where everybody grazes their cattle. So they don't have that sense of isolation, or that sense of, this is mine and you will stay off my land. They are very much more, in that regard, they're very much more communal. And I think that's what does it, because that creates for them this sense of openness and of bonding and of friendship. I mean, I know the Zimbabwean people best. They're the ones, and they are a wonderfully warm, fun, full of laughter, full of humor, and there's nothing they like more than telling stories and just sharing humor and sharing fun with people. And I mean, it starts with the kids. I'll show you a picture a little later on if you like. I'll show you with kids who have nothing and yet they have joy. And it's a wonderfully inspiring place to be when you can get amongst the people of Africa.
So we've got people who have said to me, Africa is on our bucket list. We intend to do that. I want to frame the best way to do that. Obviously, I'm assuming a safari is obligatory. That's going to be the only way, for obvious reasons, but that's going to be the only way to see the wildlife. Staying with the continent and then moving down to Southern Africa. If you had one trip to make, what region would you go to, and what's the best way to do that? Because when we went to Cape Town, Johannesburg, Durban, and then we went up into Botswana. But it's so big. How do you focus?
It's like saying, what's your favorite restaurant in San Francisco? Because San Francisco is a place with a lot of great restaurants. So Africa, to me, is like that when you ask that question. I mean, the Rift Valley in Kenya is staggeringly beautiful. The steep escarpments in the valley and so on, and what that does. The plains of the Serengeti and Tanzania are just, again, extraordinary in terms of the vastness and the size and the space there. Moving further south, Victoria Falls, which is where we start and end all our safaris, is absolutely a must-see. I mean, it is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. It is a mile-wide waterfall, particularly in high season when the river is at its peak, a mile wide of water dropping 360 feet into the gorge. So it is truly a wonderful and amazing experience. And then, as you say, Cape Town, excuse me, Cape Town is, to me, is the San Francisco of Africa. It is the similar climate. It's got beautiful wine country nearby. It's got great geography. It's got wonderful history to it. And as you said, you can go along the garden route in South Africa, which is, again, beautiful coastline of beaches, but of lagoons and of wildlife as well. There's so much in Africa that you can do. So for me, saying, what's the best place? I don't think there is a best place. The Okavango Delta is unique in the world in terms of being an inland delta. This river flows down from the north and then creates these wetlands and then disappears into the desert. So that alone, that's another one. And the staggering beauty and starkness of the Namib Desert in Namibia and the sand dunes there and the coastline. I mean, there is so much that you can say. And for each person, it's as much saying, what of all of that, what sounds like I want to do the most? Because you're right, safari is a big part of it. And for others, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa and the highest single mountain point in the world. It's whatever is your priority. It's whatever's most important to you or appeals to you most.
In the areas, not in Southern Africa, let's take South Africa, Botswana, etc., and Zimbabwe out of it. If we're going further north, is there any, because I know nothing about anything above that line. Is there anything surprising there that we should be aware of? Obviously,
Kenya, I think is unique in its own right. And again, further north than that, you start getting into the Sahara, you start getting into Sahel, and West Africa is a unique part. And I must admit, I haven't spent enough time in West Africa. My sister has spent about the last 15 years there building a vocational school. Back and forth from where she lives in Canada. But I don't know enough about West Africa. But a lot of people, then you really go further north to the north of the Sahara and Morocco, Egypt, and some of our guests who came on our last trip in May had just a 9-day Nile cruise. So, I think that it is such a vast continent. There is so much there, including what gets to be more and more popular these days. People wanted to go and see the gorillas in Rwanda or Uganda. People wanted to see the migration and the Masai Mara. So it really is. It's a treasure chest of places and things you can see and do, and for everybody it gets to be, what's your priority? What is it? What's the thing or things that you most want to do? Because you can't do it all unless you have multiple visits.
Hugh, to what extent should we be concerned about safety issues in Africa? I know in Johannesburg it's renowned for its crime, and it's terrible. But if you organize a trip to the African continent, can you put yourself in a safety cocoon to a certain extent?
Yes, you can. And I think the way to do that is to go through a reputable tour operator or travel agent who will know what and where the risks are, and ensure that, for example, if you're going from A to B, that you have a transfer which is already arranged, whether it's a minibus or whether it's a whatever, but that they will link your trip together to avoid you getting into those kinds of dangers. So, and yes, Johannesburg, I mean, I've spent a fair bit of time in the last several years on business in Johannesburg, and there, when you're staying in one of the hotels, they just don't let you go out at night unless it's their car, their driver. They'll drive you to the restaurant and say, how long do you want to be there? And they'll pick you up and bring you back safely back home. So when you're in that kind of environment, I do think then that you do have the opportunity to be looked after and to be cared for in the way that you need.
Coming from the US, where we're used to everything and we can buy everything, what cultural mistakes do we make because I know we make cultural mistakes in every country we go to, but particularly in Africa, let's say South Africa, what are the cultural mistakes that we make, and how should we temper our expectations?
That's a difficult one, because again, the cultures that exist in Africa, many of them are unique to that region. I mean, Africa there are so many cultures which actually in many cases cross boundaries, because when the colonists went in, to your point earlier, they went in and drew lines that suited them, not suited where the natural ethnic groupings of people were. So from that point of view, the cultural things that we should look for and respect are, starting with the what I mentioned earlier, the attachment to land, the attachment to the feeling that all of this belongs to us. I attended a meeting yesterday, and the speaker was talking about mountain lions and saying, the animals are owned by the people. And I thought, no, they're not. Animals aren't owned by us. That's a very human thing to say, that animals are owned by us. No, they're not. And in the same way, I feel about in Africa, the African people have an immense pride in their own cultures, their own background, but they have been that they have in many ways a laissez-faire, a very easy way of going about things, which results in some of the I think some of the slower progress, because there hasn't been an intensity about making everything happen. I don't understand enough about the anthropology of it to be able to speak authoritatively on it. But I think that as going anywhere, in answer to your question, the key is to respect whatever local culture you can find or you can read about beforehand, and simply just to behave in accordance with that. But they're not difficult. Their culture is not as difficult, for example, as it is in Japan, where it's very, very protocol driven and so on. It's very much looser than that. But at the same time, out of respect, I think we all need to just be sure we know and understand where those cultural boundaries or cultural preferences are.
Let me rephrase the question. You see a lot of people coming through with the safaris that you lead. When do you sit back silently in your own mind and say, boy, I wish I could retrain that guest, or I wish that guest hadn't done that, or that guest has lost an opportunity to gain something here? What are the common mistakes that you see privately?
The common mistakes that you see are people who are expecting to be able to have everything they have back home, and they complain when it's not there. And unfortunately, for example, and we always get all of the people's dietary preferences from them beforehand, well beforehand. But unfortunately, some people do have dietary restrictions, like gluten-free or non-dairy or what, and so they want almond milk or oat milk, and that's not commonly available there. It's just simply not part of it. And so for them, that becomes a real problem. What we do is, and this is I can only speak for what we do with our guests. We get the information from them early, and then we talk to them about the fact that that's going to be difficult to do that, but the camp can look after you on gluten-free, the camp can look after kosher, the camp can look after halal, anything you want. But some of these things are just not available there. But what we will look for and try to find some alternative for them always, so that they are prepared for it ahead of time and not feeling somehow that they're not able to get what they really think they're looking for in Africa. And I think that's the mistake people do make. They say, well, why can't I get McDonald's here? Well, because McDonald's aren't there. And it's changing the expectation ahead of time. So we do send out a lot of information on the country. We talk about the culture. We talk about what they may experience to try to get people prepared for it. We can only hope they read the stuff we send them. Some of them absolutely have. They've read every word. Others clearly haven't. But at least what we've tried to do is to prepare people so that they don't have those sort of the nasty niggling shocks that they didn't expect.
All right, let's get into the safari business, and I want to start at 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
Then I want to get down and talk about Tasimba as well. And I know you've got a series of visuals or photographs you want to share with us as well, which we'll bring in at the appropriate time. Just sort of the generic question: how do you get the most out of a safari?
By choosing the safari that will best suit what you think is important to you. Now, most safari companies and most safari lodges are all talking, you've already mentioned it, the big five. And we kind of take the point of view saying Africa is so much more than big five animals. I mean, it's as if you've got a store with 10,000 items in the back, but the only things you put in the window are 5 items. It's so the way you get the most out of a safari is doing a lot of reading, looking at different things, deciding what's important to you, what you'd most like to do, and then zeroing in on that and find a good tour operator. And this is maybe one of the most difficult parts, excuse me, of getting it, is finding a tour operator who has been there or who knows it. Not someone who's dealing with something that they get from a brochure and they're selling it to you off the shelf, but someone who has been there. because when they have been there, then you know that that at least they are talking from knowledge rather than from this is what they have read online, or this is what they've been fed through the information they're able to get. And secondly, then after choosing a tour operator, then you start thinking about, well, how many places do I want to go to? What's the benefit of going to 3 or 4 different places in the course of 10 days, as opposed to taking a longer time? And we'll talk more about that when we come to Tasimba. But for the most part, most tour operators will book you in and out of places 2 or 3 days at a time. You'll go somewhere 3 days, move on. And the idea being you'll get a broader swath of experiences. So, for example, you might get 3 days in the Okavango on a water safari. You might get 3 days in Namibia, and you might get 3 days in Zimbabwe, all to give you different exposure. But the most important thing is to find someone who really knows, and that only comes from referrals from friends. It comes from, well, it's like real estate agents. I mean, how do you know who's a good real estate agent? You talk to people. You talk to someone who's dealt with them. You find out who, and you find out, and you talk to people about how to choose that tour operator who does know these things.
Well, the big 5: lion, elephant, leopard,
rhino, and buffalo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that tends to be the predominant. I mean, that's the stimulus, right? I want to see the big 5. Put that aside. We'll get you the big 5. How big is the canvas? Pardon me. How big is the palette?
Say the question again, Alf. How big is
outside of you've seen the big 5? How big is the palette or the menu? Right?
Oh, yeah.
I've flown over the Victoria Falls, which makes Niagara look like a stream.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. What else is there beyond just the big 5?
Well, there is spending more time in nature to be able to watch how the animals and all of the species interact with each other, how nature is interconnected with itself in so many ways, from the tiniest insect up until you get up to the size of the elephant or the hippopotamus. But so it is about how incredibly interwoven and interlinked nature is, and how many different species there are. The more you spend in a place, the more you find of different species. Fascinating stuff. The beauty of being on safari is that no 2 days are the same. And so what you learned today was interesting. Tomorrow might be a completely different exposure, a completely different set of wildlife or of nature or of things that the guides will share with you. And so it's that surprise factor, that newness every day. You know, I always get a kick out of people saying, "Oh, you can't stay in a place more than about 3 days because you get bored." And I'm saying, think about the guides. These guides have been trained for years and years, and at early breakfast, it's 5:30 in the morning. They're standing there and they're like kids who cannot wait to get into the candy jar because they want to get out there and see what happened overnight and what's new, what's changed. And for them, they do it every day and they're excited about it. And so that's part to me of taking this wider view of Africa, saying, okay, the big 5 is important. And I do love watching elephants. I love being close to the lions. I love watching and being observing all of these species interacting. But the beauty of it is that each day there is something that can surprise you, something that can amaze you, something that can make you not forget yesterday. We tell all our guests, and we give them a journal at the beginning of the week saying, listen, you need this, because by Wednesday you'll have forgotten what you saw on Monday because you've seen so much on Tuesday and Wednesday. So keep a journal, because it's all so amazing each day, but each day is somehow different.
And I want to just go back again, Hugh. If let's say you've got 10 days, 10 to 14 days, are you better off hitting 3 or 4 different regions, locales, or do you get more out of essentially plunking down and really spending time in the one area or the one region?
if you've got 14 days, I personally would be sure to include somewhere like Cape Town in for 4 days in that, because Cape Town is just such a unique and such a great destination. Cape Town and Victoria Falls are number 1 and 2 in the whole of Southern Africa destinations. So I would certainly spend time there, and I would also spend a couple of days in Victoria Falls. Now you're back. Now you've got probably 9 days left of your 14. At the most I would do is 2 safari camps. And we'll get to talk about the benefit and the reasons why we do ours for 7 days. But I would not do what, unfortunately, the industry does. And so this is me saying I'm the only one marching in step and they're all out of step. But I would not tell people go to three different places, because what happens when you do that is it's like a stone skipping off the water. When you throw a stone, a flat stone, and all it does is just skims the surface. The guides in those places are trained to show you as much as they can about the place so that you'll remember it and perhaps come back. So you tend to go very quickly from one sighting to another, because they're trying to get to show you everything they possibly can. And you really don't get to know the guides. You don't get to know the people. You don't get to know the staff. You don't get to know the area very well before you're packing your bags and moving off somewhere else. So, we always say that in 7 days straight in one camp, which is what we do, you get to have as many full days on safari as you do in 9 or 10 days if you're jumping around from place to place, because you've always got the travel day in between.
So much to ask you here, but one quick question. Is there an ideal time of the year to visit Southern Africa?
Most people, the high season is partly driven, I think, by northern hemisphere vacation time and northern hemisphere summer. So the high season is usually from June through September or October, because that tends to be the dry season in all of the wildlife areas, and therefore you get better viewing because you don't have so much foliage in the way when you're driving through the slightly forested areas, and so that's the high season. It's about twice as expensive as the shoulder months and as the rest of the year. There is just as much to see if you go in April and May or in October, November. Those are the shoulder months. There's just as much to see because you're at the beginning in April, May of their Southern African winter. And in October, November, you're at the beginning of summer and at the end of a long dry season. And so you've got a lot of animals just crowding the water holes until the rains start to come and new natural water holes pick up. The green season, which is really November, mid-November through March or April, is absolutely magnificent if you're into birds, because all of the northern birds are now there. The colors are amazing. It's also a great time to watch what's going on with the plains game, in particular, the wildebeest and impala, all of which had their breeding season in about May and are dropping their calves and their lambs at that time, because it's sort of a synchronized breeding season they have, so that they absolutely flood the area with the young, so the young don't all get picked off by the predators. Inevitably some do, but it's nature's way of ensuring that there will be successors surviving that. So you see all these absolutely newborn lambs and calves, and then gradually, very quickly, they're starting to run with the herd and grow very fast, because they've got to survive a long dry winter that's coming up. So the green season has its own magic, and I can give you a reason to go any time of year, honestly, but those are the sort of the main features of the seasonality.
The guides, quickly on the guides. It strikes me that the guide really can make the difference. A great guide is what?
A great guide is a guide who has been and learned a lot and has been in the same area for quite some time, but who also has the ability very quickly to understand what's important to you and therefore to help you see it. A great guide, many people come away and they're absolutely in love with their guides because they think they had the best guide you could possibly have. And that's one of the qualities of those guides, is that they are articulate, they are fun-loving, they show you things, they are great to be with. and they're entertaining in the vehicles. They're so good because, for example, if things are a little bit quiet, they will stop and they will show you something that is completely, you weren't even expecting. They may show you an old skull of or they may show you a little plant that if you rub it in your hands, it's like soap, and they do use it as soap. They'll show you something because what they're really doing is just continuing to keep you engaged rather than sitting there saying, I don't see anything going on. So that's a great guide. But for me, the best guides in Africa, and I am clearly biased about Zimbabwe on this, but Zimbabwe has the toughest certification for guides of any country in Africa. It takes years to get to be qualified as a professional guide. They put these regulations or these certifications in place in 1980 to get to be qualified and get the proficiency of a pro guide. Only this year have they just qualified the 200th person in 43 years to qualify at that level. So the Zimbabwean guides are in a class of their own in that regard. They are absolute masters of every possible part of it, both the wildlife, the trees, the shrubs, the insects, the land, the soil, tracking, the whole bit. They're brilliant. And it's one of the reasons why, we have used with our trips, we use the same guys each time, and they're 2 pro guides, and we use them every trip because they know us and they know that they've got 7 days with our guests, which allows them to go deeper and deeper than they normally would on the typical 3-day circuit.
Let's talk about Tasimba. 2015, we're 8 years in now. Just give me the facts. How big, how many a year? Where do you give me the overview?
We typically do 2 to 3 trips a year, and they are usually in April, May, and or October, November. And we take between 8 and 12 guests at a time, and we go to the same area in Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe, which is a concession of wilderness safaris. So they have this 120,000 acre private concession. And so we always go there. There are 2 camps that we use, well, 3 actually, but we primarily use 2 of those camps, and they're all very small camps. I mean, the biggest is 9 rooms. And so we are, and we do this, we gather people who are curious enough. They want to go on learning. They want more than just take pictures of the big 5 or go from place to place. They want to go deeper. They are sort of, if you like, the serial learners of our community, of our life. People who just continue to want to learn more. And so those sorts of people are attracted to Tasimba. I will be the first to say Tasimba is not for everybody, because there are some people who really do want, they just, it's like people who go to Europe and in 2 weeks they say, well, we did 9 countries. Well, right. if that's what floats your boat, that's fine. But people who want the sort of people say, I want to take a little villa somewhere down in Sicily, and I want to live in that village and feel and be part of that. So it's more of that type of person who wants to experience more of the place and get deeper into the culture and the people and the community and the whole notion of nature at its best. So Tasimba, I think we've done 12 trips so far. We lost obviously 20 and 21 completely. We did 2 last year. We've done 2 so far this year. We've so far got 3 booked next year, possibly a 4th. So, we're just assembling it. We are also catering to groups that form themselves. The last group who came in was formed by a guy who I'd worked with in the past as a CEO. And he said, I'm bringing a group. And he did. He brought a group of 8 people. So they already knew each other. So that trip was much easier for us from the point of view of making sure everybody got blended. But in every other trip, what we do is, even when there's complete strangers, when they meet, we have given them an African clan name. And the purpose of giving them an African clan name is to let them feel they belong to something. And we tell them about that clan. And during the course of the week and that, we continually move them onto different vehicles, sharing with different people, sitting next to different people at dinner time, so that they do become, and they get to know each other very well. And because they're the only people in camp, they therefore get to feel that they do have this family bond that starts to form. They've shared so many experiences that for them it becomes the sharing becomes a part of their whole deeper learning, because they get to see how somebody else viewed something, and whether it was animals doing something or whatever, but they get to hear how other people saw that. So that's, I mean, Tasimba is essentially a custom designed safari that we put together with the help of some of the best people I've ever known in wildlife, people who had ideas about what to do and what not to do, on top of what my own experience was. And it was just trying to pull together the best of everything into one complete package. And it's also, the other thing about it is that it's hosted, meaning my partner and I are on every trip. We don't just package it up and send you off to Africa and hope like heck that it works. We are there 24/7 to make sure that everything is seamless and everything is beautiful. And what the part we get a lot of benefit out of when people say, you know what made this so much better was I didn't have to think of anything. You guys thought of everything, and it all just was so well planned, well executed, and yet it was just felt like it was the best possible week I could have had.
On our trip, using both extremes, we did the obligatory Kruger National Park in South Africa, and then we went to a private reserve. I think I told you, Mashatu in Botswana. And I know in my mind what the difference was, but talk to people about the difference between what you're talking about with Tasimba versus, and I don't mean this pejoratively, but the more Disneyland approach or Disney World approach of a Kruger.
Yeah, well, I think that a big part of that, Alf, is the private wilderness. And it really is a private wilderness. The only vehicles that are there are vehicles that come from one of the three small camps. So, and it's 120,000 acres, which is a vast area where you may see one other vehicle all day, whereas in a Kruger or other places, they're
everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also true in places like Tanzania and that, where, the Serengeti is so big, but they're all on radio with each other. And if there's a kill or something to see, all of a sudden a whole grouping of vehicles will be all around it. And the background to your photos will be other vehicles. So there is an immense benefit to being in this vast area with just so few people and so few other vehicles that you do feel that first thing you feel is, I'm alone in their space. This space belongs to wildlife. This is not a human space. This is theirs. And so you feel like this is what a privilege to be in their space and be, able to experience a place without all of the trappings and all of the noise and all of the bustle of other vehicles and people who've got a radio playing or music playing too loudly or whatever. So there is that privacy, and that exclusivity is a huge plus. And that's one of the things that we insisted on and why we continue to go back to that particular place. It's a much larger area even than Mashatu. And I know Mashatu and we have checked it out. It's a much larger area than that. And so you've got a much more variety of landscape. You've got open grasslands, but you've also got some forested areas. You've got the water holes, and then you've got some areas where it's just beautifully, and all of it is pristine anyway. The only things there are the tracks that the vehicles follow, and they must follow. The vehicles in that park may not leave any of the tracks that have been approved by the park. So you don't have people charging all over the countryside, leaving ruts and creating potential soil erosion by spinning their wheels and going up over across a gully or whatever. In that regard, their conservation starts with preserving the area that they have as a concession from the national park.
Allow me to ask a granular question. It's sort of logistically, I've made a decision. I'm going to go on a safari. It's December. I've booked with you. I cut you a check. It's my job to get myself to a major airport. Yes, like a Cape Town or Johannesburg.
Yeah.
Do you take over from there? And how many more checks do I write?
You get to Victoria Falls. And after you meet up with us, you don't write another check. You don't even need to put your hand in your pocket. The only thing we do, everything. The only thing we do say is, and originally we said we will cover all the gratuities, and we still do cover gratuities. But our guests said, no, we want to pay the gratuities as well to the camp. So that's the only other thing that you would do. If you go to a market or crafts market or whatever, then that's optional as to whether you'd you pay for anything there. But no, everything from the flight into camp, everything in camp is completely covered, and you never need even to have your wallet on you or anything like that. Most people.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to say, most people also, after a few days, unless the only phone they brought is on the back of this thing, but most people leave this thing behind as well. They don't use it. Partly because we actually don't have Wi-Fi there, and we don't have a cell signal there. So, and some people say, I can't do without that. And I said, you'd be amazed. You'd be amazed. By the end of, I had one woman who was an executive. She ran a cybersecurity firm. She was basically, her life lived here, right here. That was her life. And at the end of the week, she said, how long till we get to Johannesburg after we got to Victoria Falls? How long till we get to Johannesburg? And I said, about another 3 hours, including this flight. She said, I don't need to switch my phone on until then. That's so good. So she wanted to stay offline because she had she was enjoying the peace of it so much.
Well, for an upscale safari, and I want to stay upscale right now. Well, I'm not talking about Bill Gates opulence, but decent opulence. What is the level? Am I staying in a silken tent, a canvas tent, a chalet? What's the food level like? What's the transportation like? Do I get a good cold gin martini at the end of the? How does it work? Because opulence, feeling good is also important.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we are not a bricks and mortar lodge, which is, and there are many of those, and many of them are beautiful, and they are like Four Seasons hotels in the bush. And that we are a tented camp, but it is a deluxe, superb camp. All the rooms are they're solid structures, meaning steel structure, but canvas sides, canvas roof. But in one of the camps you go to, they actually have sliding glass doors out onto your private deck. So they're not sort of pup tents or any of that. They are very comfortable, beautifully appointed, superbly comfortable. And the food is always different and interesting and amazing. And everybody and there's so much of it. People say, when do we ever stop eating around here? There's always, and the food is good, really good. And also we had catered to people's dietary requirements if necessary. The camp knows ahead of time, this person is vegan, okay? There's always something special for them. So it is really a luxury experience, but it is not the most expensive place you can possibly go to. But at the same time, we know that this is a superior safari experience. It is not a bare bones camp at all. It is very, very beautifully done. And yes, you will get your martini. And mostly by the time on the second day, by the time you get off the vehicle, when you're coming back to camp in the evening, they'll hand it to you before you've even asked for it. So you don't have, yeah.
Quickly on safety again, because I know it's always in the back of people's minds. I always remember Mashadu, we would hear the lions during the evening. You'd hear the rustles. We were always told, like the movie Apocalypse Now, don't get out of the truck. Is safety a factor, or is it okay? And have you ever had any incidences where things went wrong?
Knock on wood, we have not, and neither have, and I mean, I don't recall, although I know the wilderness folks who run that operation very well, they've not had that, because the guides are so protective of the guests, in part because that's their job, but equally they've got a selfish interest in that. If the guides put you into an exposure which is dangerous to you, they can very well lose the license that took them 6 or 7 years to qualify for. So they don't want to do that. They have, on a walking safari, they have a gun with them. The last thing they want to do is put themselves or you in the danger. They've got to use the gun, because that alone could cost them their license. So from the point of view of safety, there is there's a really, really well-defined cautionary and prohibited limits. For example, you may not walk to or from your room at night without the armed guide taking you there. And once you're in your room, you stay there overnight. And because all the rooms anyway are ensuite, fully ensuite, so you don't need to leave there. But so even in the early morning, the guides will come around and call you, wakey around 5 o'clock. It may not be light till 5:30, but you can only leave when there's sufficient light to be able to walk safely to the camp and to look around you all the time, just in case there's something grazing nearby. If there may be an elephant, there may be, it's unlikely there would be lions in camp that the guides wouldn't say, stay in your room because there's a lion, there's a lion who's walking by. They will do that. So safety is a priority and is absolutely, for their business and for ours at Tasimba, for their business, you can't take any risk at all.
If I'm sitting outside my tent at dusk,
yeah,
what am I likely to see outside of the fact that, and I'm enjoying my martini, am I likely to see any wildlife at that point?
Yeah, you see, you'll be looking at the waterhole. You'll be seeing an absolutely beautiful, incredible sunset that will take your breath away, and you'll see animals like the elephants in the background to my shot here. That's shot right from the deck of one of our camps across the waterhole, and there are the elephants. They've had their evening drink, and they're heading into the forest. Actually, all through the evening, while we may be sitting outside al fresco, dining on the warmer nights and that, you may hear something going on at the waterhole. You may hear elephants there. You may hear buffalo coming through. So there's often action goes on at the waterhole through the early hours of the evening. But you're likely in that moment when you're sitting on the deck of your camp, of your tent, you're likely to be just completely absorbed by the different sounds of the wilderness, the birds, which are now starting to shut down a little bit, but then the distant calling of a male lion trying to call the pride together wherever they are and trying to hook up with them. The sounds of elephants rumbling as they're communicating by the waterhole. You'll hear so many sounds, and it's like we call it the profound silence of the bush, because it's not actually silent, but it's silent of all of the noise of humanity, and the only sounds you hear are the sounds of wildlife.
I really mentioned competition, but I want to do this just to sort of have a comparison. I'm going to pick Abercrombie and Kent, a very high-end safari packager, and I want to compare that with Tasimba. I'm less concerned about this one's got a better tent than this one. From a psychology point of view and from a vision point of view, how does Tasimba vary from other reputable high-end competitive tour groups? What's your point of uniqueness?
It is that we are, because we're hosted, because we are there with you rather than relying on the camp to be, and Abercrombie and Kent and the whatever safari lodge they put you in to be the providing you with everything you need. We are there, and very clearly we say to our guests, anything at all that you need from the camp or from us or from wherever, you call us and you get, so immediately what we're providing is an on-site 24/7 concierge service, if you will, as well as knowledgeable leadership. And people often say to us, you guys bring so much extra to it because you've both been here so many times. You're able to point stuff out and help us really get into it. The other part about it that is I think is a huge part of our uniqueness, Alf, is this, that we do create both ahead of time. We send you a lot of different stuff, a lot of different information to help you prepare for it, whether it's photographic information, whether it's cultural stuff, whether it's about Zimbabwe, the country, or whether it's about how to get the most out of your own safari with us. We send a lot of stuff to prepare you for it. But then we've planned, without you knowing how much we've planned things to go on every single day that kind of keep changing the agenda, so that there are always, we keep them up our sleeve. We don't even tell the organizers of groups who are coming with us what surprises we've got up our sleeve for them, because it's to try again to make people feel, oh my God, that is so beautiful. That's so unexpected. I'll give you a funny story from this last trip. There was a guy who I just saw on Facebook. He had a 75th birthday. World traveler, experienced guy, lived in Asia and in Europe for most of his life, now lives in Arizona. But he said to me on about the third or fourth day, he said, Hugh, I'm mad at you. I said, what have I done now? He said, you didn't tell me how good this really is. You didn't create my expectations. And I'm mad at you because you denied me from looking forward to it as much as I should have. And I said to him, I can't win that, because if I had oversold it, you'd be disappointed. So, but he wasn't, I mean, he was just saying that it is so much, and he keeps using, and they all did keep using the words beyond expectations. And I think that's that is one of the key differentiators. Everything we do, we just want to do it a little bit better, whether it's a special little gift on your pillow at night, which symbolizes something that we did during the day, or whether it's a quote card, whether it's a theme, which we build every day. We have indabas, and indaba is an African traditional meeting. We take the camp stools out, stick them under a tree out in the bush somewhere, and sit there. Animals may be going by, and the guides are there with us, of course. And we lead people through a series of connected topics, which lead to what we're hoping they will take away from it, which is, what do I really want to do differently in my life? I've had this opportunity to be completely cut off from everything, all of the distractions. And I've been in this amazing place, which has allowed me to feel inspired and open to new possibilities. What do I want to do for the rest of my life? And so we're trying to give people a takeaway, which is personal, about what they thought of when they were on safari, that they would like to be doing and leaving a different impact.
I'm at the 10-minute mark, and we're tight for time, and we tend to be very strict that way. I want to give me 5 minutes. I know you collected some visuals that we should see. Can you give me 5 minutes of visuals? Then I want to come back, and I want to close with the 2 questions from you. But go ahead and screen share. Let's hope this works.
I'll go through these. Yeah, very, very quickly. Okay, have you got that?
Got it loud and clear.
Good. Okay. So just to look into the eyes of a lion and to see those amber eyes looking at you like this from this kind of close range is one of the things you will never forget all your life. And the whole purpose of this is to say, when you have the time to just be so close and just to look at and admire at this wonderful creature, that's part of having time. And that's one of the things that we really cherish we have. I wanted to point this out because it's way you learn things from what the animals are doing. 5 lovely zebras, all looking in the same direction. Clear message, there's a predator right there, and they know it's there, and they're all watching to see, is it time to run, or is it not? But so it's what you learn from watching what the animals are doing. That's one of the sort of the benefits of being there longer, to be able to understand these things. This is for any of the ladies present. You'll see that these are 2 gray-crowned cranes. They mate for life, and that's the male in the background. You'll see his one foot's off the ground because he's actually doing a dance, and that's it's an obligation he has every so often to do a dance for his lady and show her what a cool guy he really is. And when you get to see it like this, it's very amusing because he's really showing off, and it's a wonderfully amusing part of life. Elephants. You sit and watch them for hours and hours. And here's a case where elephants greet each other. And you'll see this one on the right, the trunk is curling around, is actually touching the mouth of the other one. That's part of their greeting. It's almost like elephants kissing. It's part of when they meet, and they may be in separate families, but they're related somehow, or they know each other. And it's just like getting back together at the waterhole. And meantime, in the background, there's a younger one who can't resist just having a good splash in the water with his trunk. But it's watching the behaviors of elephants. You can do it for hours and hours and continue learning the whole time. I talked about the joy of the kids. We take our guests to the village, and one of the things we do is we put our guests with a group of kids of this sort of age and stage. They're grade 6 or 7, and our guests have about 20 minutes of conversation with these kids. And they all come away saying they have so much joy. They've got nothing. They walked 7 miles from home to school, and yet here they are. They're just full of life and joy and ambition and hope for the future. And it's one of the most inspiring parts of our week. This is just to show you that that's one of the camps we use, Linquasha behind us, and the buffalo come to visit, and they'll come right up to the edge of camp, and they'll just stay and do their thing. They'll graze, and if you look as though you might be in any way threatening them, they'll do what they're doing here. They all up and look at you and say, "You do not want to mess with us. We are mean, we are ornery, and we will not take kindly to you messing with us." So that's just to show them in relation to the camp. This shot has a lot going on with it. The reason I wanted to mention it is because cheetahs are daytime hunters, where the lions and leopards and other animals, most of them are nighttime hunters. The cheetahs always run the lookout. They very seldom sleep during the day, whereas lions is pretty much all they do all day. But they love to get on a termite mound, and there's a story itself behind a termite mound, and that gets them a little higher altitude to be able to see further. And they have amazing eyesight. They can pick out prey from 2 or 3 miles range. They can pick out exactly where and then they can start the hunt from there. In the background, just a family of elephants. They've had a drink at the water hole. They're moving on into the forest. And between the elephants on the far right in the water, there's a hippo there. And there's a bunch of Egyptian geese there. So this picture just shows about 5 different species, all in one photo. And that again is part of the magic of being there. This is just to show you what one of the camps is like. I mean, this is the dining areas on the left, and the bar and the lounge are on the right. It's comfortable. The rooms are all then spread about 50 yards apart on either side of the main area. And here in the middle, you've got the seating area where campfire night is always out there. Sometimes during the day, the meals will be out on the al fresco as well, and at night. So it's just the warmth and the absolute beauty of some of these camps is breathtaking. And this is just to show you what can easily happen. These 2 ladies were sitting on a hot afternoon, watching a whole parade of elephants going by to the water hole in the middle of the afternoon. And this one family came right over to the pool because they knew this water is cleaner and nicer and cooler than the water in the water hole. And they're led by the big matriarch. She's the one at the back. But even there's calves there. The little one on the right is recently learned how to use his or her trunk. And so this is just, both these women said, "I'll never forget that moment in my life." That pool is no more than 20 feet long. So they were sitting on the edge of it, just watching it. And finally, there's nothing quite like an African sunset, and there's nothing quite like a safari just to connect, whether it's with your spouse or whether it's with the people you're with, and a sundowner's drink by the water at sunset, hard to beat. There you go. That's my
Fantastic.
5 minutes.
Fantastic, Hugh. Listen, we got a couple of minutes here. Just two final questions, if I may. By the way, I got a question here. How do you compare Tasimba to, for example, safaris organized by National Geographic? Quick response.
Oh, I mean, I think the National Geographic safaris, some of them are just absolutely incredible, but a lot of them do what I was talking about, and that is they go, and their purpose is to go to several different places, to give you a scope of different places. And ours is very much a deeply immersive safari in one place, because we want you to get right deep into the nature, the culture, the community, the conservation. We want to take you deeper into that. So, and we do connect it with a theme. That would be the key difference.
So for those who have African safari on their bucket list, steps they should take, they're going to go. How do they investigate the tour options? Where do they go for honest information, right? What should they avoid? And what are the must-sees? Wrap it up in sort of the inevitable 25 words or less.
Yeah. Find a tour operator who others have used and friends have used, who has really, really looked after everything. That tour operator who would connect everything from the moment you land to the moment you leave, and would have it all seamlessly connected. So you don't have to worry about how do we get from A to B to Z. So that's one. Number 2, pitfalls. Just understand that camps are different, safaris are different, guides are different, locations are different, and get to talk to somebody or can be convinced that the people who are recommending a place have been there and know it well, so that you can take that referral, because there's so many choices otherwise. There's 10,000 different safari operations for you to choose from. What other parts have I missed in the last 30 seconds I've got?
Pitfalls? No, we've covered them, haven't we?
Simply don't try and do it. Don't try and do it as a do it yourself. Don't try and put your own agenda together, because it's that's not a good. It doesn't work well.
Final question. The most compelling experience, it's an unfair question, but give me one compelling experience for you personally in Africa, Tasimba or non-Tasimba.
I think as a little boy, learning when they were filling up Kariba Dam, which became a man-made lake of 180 miles long and 30 miles wide. And as the water started to rise, animals were getting caught on islands which were going to become submerged. And as a kid, there was a group of people who started Operation Noah, and they were saving animals from those places and bringing them onto the mainland. And for me, it was just, these people were my heroes. They were like, and they were catching everything from snakes to lions to rhinoceroses to elephants and everything, and moving them in open boats across to what would become safety. And for me, it was perhaps where I just fell in love with the idea of conservation and preserving, and the need to preserve every single wild animal we possibly can.
Hugh, the inevitable, how can people get in contact with you? Is it through Tasimba, just tasimba.com?
Yes, it is. And in fact, I'll just put a different photo, just put that right up here. If I've got right there you go.
Perfect. So it's San Francisco number is just tasimba.com, and people will be able to get through to you and see the website as well. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I could go on for another 2 hours because we haven't even scratched the surface, but I really appreciate it. And what we're going to do, we haven't done this before, Hugh. We're going to send this note out, this link out to all of our LuxeSF. We've got about 12,000 people on our database. Because I want more people to see this. This has been very, very illuminating. I want to thank you for joining us today. You're wonderful, and you lead a wonderful, not a cause, but just a wonderful experience. So it's been a pleasure to have you today. Thank you.
Thanks, Alf. Thank you so much. I love, as you can tell, I love talking about Africa. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
It's very obvious. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. I will be sending out the links this afternoon. And next time we may do this from Africa, from South Africa. See you all. Take care.